Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
There's a new award-winning 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey that's been taking the market by storm, Penelope Bourbon. Penelope's balanced yet flavorful taste profile comes from a unique blend of 3 bourbon mash bills. Currently available in 3 expressions, 4-grain, barrel strength, and toasted, Penelope is remarkably smooth and flavorful. So whether you're sipping neat or using it in your favorite cocktail, Penelope is perfect for you. Penelope Bourbon is available throughout Kentucky, as well as select markets and online at penelopebourbon.com.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios tonight is my good friend, my bourbon drinking buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing,
Hey,
man?
Mark, I'm doing great. How about yourself this evening?
Matt, I've learned 2 very valuable lessons in the last 24 hours. Number 1, you do not schedule a Zoom barrel pick on a Monday night and drink 5 different barrels that are 125 to 135 proof. So that's lesson number 1 I learned this week. Number 2, you don't schedule a 90-minute massage 3 hours before you're supposed to do a podcast recording session. So 2 valuable lessons I've learned this week. Matt, what about you?
I don't know. I thought the lesson number 1 wasn't a terrible idea. Maybe the problem was drinking as much of dude. 5 of those as some of us may have. But man, I went to bed with the walls spinning a little bit last night too. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, you and me both. I stayed up at like 12:30 watching Christmas Carol, and I was like freaked out watching the Ghost of Christmas Future. It's like, oh yeah, a little too much high proof bourbon, man, but it was a good time. So Matt, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits. And we do thank all of our sponsors as well that help and support us. We really appreciate all the things that they do for us and love working with them. Matt, we have one Barrel Society birthday this week. Derek Suzakawa, man, our Hawaii connection, the guy that hooked us up with that old scout. Yeah,
Derek,
man. So
happy birthday.
It is his birthday. Yeah, it'll be his birthday this week. So happy birthday, Derek. And again, appreciate you bringing that bottle all the way from Hawaii when you came to Kentucky to visit us, man.
No doubt. Thank you, Derek.
Super awesome, man. The Hawaii Mafia or Hawaii Whiskey Mafia pick. That was great. We appreciate that. Matt, I've wasted enough time, man. You want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Let's do it. Let's get right down to the Bourbon Life Podcast here. And we've got the co-founders of the Brothers Bond Bourbon, Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley. Fellas, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thanks for having us on this, and thanks for doing what you do to, spread not only the word about this, but also too just about the experience. It's getting people together, talking and listening, about these spirits is really special. So thank you. We're really overjoyed to be with you guys.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. We really appreciate that.
I was about to chime in myself, and I'm noticing that my network connectivity is spotty. So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I
got you loud and clear.
Yeah,
appreciate the little tour of the abode there that you just took us on.
Yeah.
So I'm up north. I'm up north. Actually, it's just my parents and me and my dog, and we're doing a little bit of skiing. And I'm in this like super old school cabin with like a router
That's
from
awesome.
like 19, probably like the first year internet was developed. So anyway, I'm here though, and I'm grateful to be here. Glad you can hear me.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate this. I've been looking forward to doing this show for quite a while. So we're really happy to have you guys on with us. What we usually like to do, well, I usually forget and start asking questions and having a conversation, but what we need to do is talk about what we're going to be drinking tonight. So we've got poured up something special. So if you guys, Ian, Paul, one of you guys want to just kind of share with us, tell us what we got poured up to drink.
Yeah. Paul, you want me to go since I've got some good connection?
Yeah, get it.
So check this out, guys. So what we've got, Brothers Bond Bourbon. It is a 4-grain, 80 proof bourbon, aged minimum of 4 years. Actually, 4 years on the dot, really exactly 4 years and 1 day. Obviously, we blend 3 grains to get this 4-grain. You've got high rye, 65% corn, 22% rye. We obviously, anybody listening knows anything over 18% is considered pretty high rye. Wheat and barley we keep to ourselves for now. Jim Rutledge he said he appreciated that, but he kind of giggled and said, "Well, that won't last." But Paul and I, Paul and I blended this for 14 months in my kitchen and in my office in this room, and we spent 6 months just adjusting wheat and barley. And so we just figured we'll keep that to ourselves for now. But what we were searching for was an equal sensory proportion, right? Where all of those grains are expressed over your palate, but in total balance and harmony, ultimately. I'm not trying to sound too kumbaya about it. That's literally what it is, And so you get a great nose, you get a great experience, a great finish, and it doesn't break the bank and it doesn't destroy your palate. It's just it's everything we've ever dreamed of.
Yeah, and when Ian and I, we the name Brothers Bond is a nod to us and obviously our bond. But I mean, ultimately, Ian and I bonded over easy drinking, bourbons when we were shooting down south. And so our dream was to kind of like create our own bourbon that was our palate, that was reminiscent of what we, drank when we had our bond and our connection. And so, we're so proud of this because for us, this is our easygoing, like bourbon, go-to bourbon that, you can, Ian always says like, someone who's never drank, dark spirit in their life and never had a bourbon, they can drink and really go, oh, wow, I didn't know I like bourbon. And then someone who's, been drinking bourbon for over a decade or more, can say, oh yeah, this is really great. And so that for us, that was like the 2-part approach. And that's what we really wanted to do. And we're pretty thrilled with the result.
Yeah, that's great. So you said, so it is 80 proof. So we know that. And then you said this is a blend of 3 different mash bills. Is that right?
3 different mash bills. Correct.
Okay. But the average though, when you blend it together, the averages come out to 65 corn and 22 rye. Is that?
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Matt, that's a high rye, man. That's right in your wheelhouse, bro. I knew you're
I'll take it.
Yeah, high rye.
I'll take it.
So what do you pick up, man? What do you get on the nose on this, Matt?
I picked up a little bit of mint right away, which I was kind of surprised at. But now hearing the mash bill of that 22% rye makes a lot more sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It's got the good caramel and vanilla. And then there's a really, really great aroma of honey wheat, like fresh baked wheat bread, maybe like a fresh whole wheat pancake.
Banana bread, maybe.
Yeah. And then some oak. I can tell it's got age on it. The 4 years is coming across with the oak in it as well. I wasn't expecting to get as much of it, but it's really, really pleasant. It's certainly not overly oaky, but there is just a nice little waft of oak in there to provide some backbone on it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. It's got, it's really nicely balanced. What's that?
What are you finding? What do you get on that nose?
I get for me, Matt's the palate guy. Matt's the sensory expert on the show. And, my thing is, I'm like, yeah, I follow Matt because he always says it much better. But I do pick up almost like a sweet fruit type of, it's not apples, maybe some type of ripe, like maybe red apple or something like that, possibly.
Oh, interesting.
I get some caramel, vanilla. I do see what Matt's talking about in terms of the oak. So that does come through to me just a little bit, not much. This actually noses higher than 80 proof to me. But it's not, something that's going to blow you out of the water. It's not like what we drink last night for our barrel pick. It wasn't 133 proof or something. But yeah, so this does actually have, to me, a little bit of a higher nose. It's not an alcohol, like an ethanol, like a burn. It just noses like a higher proof.
I'll be interested.
Than 80.
I'll be interested to hear what you think of our cask strength. See what you think of that nose, because we got cask strength coming out very soon. So that's very excited about it.
Save that for later.
It's a really special. But honestly, I'm grateful you're saying that, Matt. I think one thing that we've always known and learned, obviously, about bourbon, especially when you're looking at that nose. What's kind of great about it too is that higher up you are, the more you're going to get those sort of lighter floral notes, maybe a little bit of orange peel, but more floral. And then as you come down onto our bourbon, you really pick up those bigger, deeper, maybe the real orange peel, but then you get that baked banana bread, like you said, toasted sort of wheat cereal, maybe pancakes. But you do really get that kind of warm spice, dried fruit. And it's just, that's what we worked. Paul and I worked tirelessly for over a year, blending morning, noon, and night. We never stopped. We obsessed until, it wasn't just something we slapped our names on. Mm-hmm. And so we obsessed over this on that nose, that banana bread, it's like,
yeah.
And honestly, it is like what grandma used to cook. Right. And what we learned is we've got to, at 4 years and a day, we literally stop the aging. We get it out of the barrel, because at 4 years and 3 months, it's a different nose, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So
it's
precision, and we obsess over this. So I'm really grateful you guys, you feel that.
Yeah, definitely. So guys, let's kind of jump back, and we've never met each other. We've never had the opportunity to do that. But if you would, can you kind of take a minute or a minute or two, or however long you like, and just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are? I mean, I'm sure most people recognize your name, but would you just kind of give us an idea of who you are, where you're from, and what your life's been like up to this point?
Go for it, Paul. I don't know who I am, so
I'm going to tell you who you are, Ian.
Thanks.
I probably know you better than your wife and your mother.
It's unbelievable.
So anyway, my name is Paul Wesley, and I am one of the co-founders of Brothers Bond Bourbon. And so I guess I'm not going to give you my life story, but Ian and I, did a TV. I'm an actor. Ian and I were cast on a TV series that we had no idea was going to end up being this worldwide phenomenon. It was this massive pop culture, sort of hit, that I didn't think for a minute was going to happen. Ian was certain that it was. So I guess he was right and I was wrong. I grew up in Jersey. And so for me, I'm first generation. My parents are from Poland, and I didn't grow up drinking bourbon. And I sort of, I sort of was more, because I'm Polish, it's more of the Slavic is sort of the vodka based type thing, but I didn't quite love it. When I moved down to Atlanta to shoot the show, we were down there for 8 years. I ended up falling in love with bourbon. It just, we drank, coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, maybe because of, we drank bourbon on the show as well. Our characters did. And so it almost in a weird kind of like, you have this like urge after you wrap. Well, I got to go get a bourbon now. I've been drinking this fake bourbon for the last 12 hours. I'm thirsty. I need a drink. It's 8 p.m. It's time to go to the bar. And so I did develop this sort of like, urge to have bourbon. And that's when I fell in love with it. and Ian and I played brothers. And so, for us, this was sort of like, this is our part two of our, in terms of our business relationship. We had I guess, a business together by being on screen, and now we're doing this now. So
what the hell were we thinking? 12 years
right?
of Paul Wesley, man. But it is really special. Like what Paul said, I'm Ian Somerhalder, and I'm the other one of three co-founders. Vincent Hanna, our CEO, our fearless leader, is the third one. But like Paul said, the boys, the brothers, our characters, they were vampires and they were 165 years old, but they bonded on screen over bourbon. Paul and I bonded off screen over bourbon. So when you look at a brand, right, there's nothing more authentic that we could have done ever. I am a Louisiana boy. I'm from the deep Southeast. I was born and raised in Louisiana. Obviously, you all know, places like Louisiana, bourbon is culture, so
sure.
After church, all the adults would be drinking, mint juleps. We would muddle the cane juice and the mint that you pick. My dad would give me a cane knife, and I would cut cane from the fence line, and you dry it back and you could grind it out. You get fresh cane juice that you would muddle with fresh mint from, under the oak tree. You know what I mean? And that was culture. That was family. And I always associated that. So it was so awesome to be able to drink bourbon with Paul all day on set. That was tea. And then we got to bond over it late at night. And we shot a lot of late nights. So we did get to the bar sometimes. It was Atlanta, so it went longer. But I mean, it might be two in the morning by the time we could even just get there and sit together and have a drink. But it was a very special time. And bourbon runs through my veins and ultimately Paul's as well. And so to have this sort of pop culture phenomenon of these characters joined together with Paul and I as individuals in our bourbon, it's a really, really, really special thing. And again, it's just our story. It's just our palate. If you were coming over to our house, this is what we would serve you, right? There's no right or wrong, or, people who, I'm not drinking anything under 100 proof. Well, I totally respect that. I think it's great. By the way, wait till you taste our 100 proof. It'll knock your socks off. But we believe this at 80 proof, like you said, it doesn't nose like an 80 proof bourbon. And I don't feel it tastes like an 80 proof bourbon, because obviously you can't do an 80 proof at 3 grain 80 proof, but that 4 grain really gives it the legs it needs to be at 80 proof. And so it ultimately drinks like a 6 or 8 year, 3 grain. So that's why we're really, really over the moon and excited.
Yeah. And speaking of the taste, Matt, now that we've nosed it and we've got the intro, let's talk about the palate, man. What do you pick up on that?
All right, let's do it. So right away on first sip, I got a ton of cherry and mint, like right up front. And then as I went back for another couple sips, I pick up a lot of like honey graham cracker with it. I think part of that is the wheat coming through. I had that kind of fresh baked wheat bread or like a wheat pancake, some sort of a baked wheat in the nose that came through on the palate for me as well. And as it's sitting a little bit longer, I'm picking up more of the baking spice. And going back to the nose, Ian, you had mentioned banana bread, and that's coming through more and more for me on the nose. And I'm also picking up a little bit of walnut as well with it. Like I think banana bread, walnuts come through as well. And I pick that up, and there's a little bit on the palate. And then here's an interesting one for you, Mark, that I've never said before. Now that we're getting to it on the palate, sumac. I taste sumac. Yeah, which is it's like a Middle Eastern spice that has like a really tart, kind of citrusy orange or lemon type taste and smell to it.
I wonder, sumac. I'm really familiar with sumac. Is it because maybe also too, sumac also gives you that sort of, it might give you that sort of citrusy tart, but it also has the ability to, I don't know how to articulate it. It becomes kind of very dry, very quick. It kind of stops on your palate. Is that what you mean? Maybe it's got a dry quality.
I'm more like I'm tasting the aroma that I get from sumac when I've cooked with it in the past.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know
cool.
what you're saying, that sometimes it has that drying, almost like a sort of like a prickly effect.
Kind of,
when you take in a bunch of sumac. But I'm not cool. getting any sort of like a cloyingly dry or tannic effect with it as well.
That's good. That's good for us, man. I think we would have to cut and then maybe reschedule. It was like
no. It certainly does not lead to anything drying as well. And then there's like, it's got good floral notes too. It's like a little rose petal and just good floral aspect to the palate as well.
That's awesome, man. Thank you.
Nice.
That's what I call
Matt,
Paul. I call Paul my little rose petal.
Yeah. Thanks. Watch out.
Oh,
this is awesome, man. Thanks for that, man.
Matt, growing up in Eastern Kentucky, man, we had poison sumac everywhere. So
very different.
When you said sumac, when you said sumac, I'm like, oh wait, what? Hold on a second.
Yeah, we did things a little different in Michigan.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I'm a redneck from Eastern Kentucky, man. So what can I say? But yeah, for me, man, I love the first sip I had, it was like the spices, the rye hit, and my tongue was just tingling. Talk about tingly tongue, prickly tongue, but it was just the rye spice really hit first. And then the second sip, I went back, and it was actually more of a sweetness. Mm-hmm. Like I was picking out some of the corn and some of the sweetness, almost like a frosted flake. And I know that sounds weird, but you get some corn note to it, but that sweetness combines with it. But then that palate, I mean, the finish, it lingers. And I'm really surprised. I shouldn't say surprised, because when I think of an 80 proof bourbon, I think of something that's just super easy to drink, and it's not going to really leave much of a finish. But this one actually does. The spiciness of that rye really, really carries through, and I really enjoy that.
Thanks for that, man. That was the goal, right? How do you, if you guys don't mind me just explaining for 2 seconds, which there were two things that went into this, right? We were never looking to dilute the bourbon category, right? We had the ability to bring in new drinkers to the bourbon category. People who, primarily, let's just be honest, millennial females, right? And I think in the whiskey business, people, companies are always saying, how do we get more women drinking whiskey? Well, what's so fun about this, because these characters, women love this profile. But it's not just ladies in younger people, whether you're Gen Z or, the later version of Gen Z, 21 to 24. I mean, all obviously LDA. But this profile, we knew we needed two things: immediate approachability right out of the bottle, Mark. And that, I mean, like where a Gen Z or a millennial, doesn't matter, or my 70-year-old mom or 80-year-old dad can literally pour this out of a glass from a bottle and drink it. But then we needed a complexity that a bourbon lover, people who understand and know bourbon, would appreciate, right? You have to have those two things. Otherwise, you got nothing. And so that's why we worked tirelessly and fought tooth and nail, not with each other, just with the elements, right? To never compromise on that. Never, ever, ever compromise on it. So yeah, that's what we did,
Yeah. I mentioned on the nose that it did not nose like an 80 proofer. And honestly, on the palate, it doesn't drink when I think of an 80 proofer, and this isn't to say anything bad because it's one of Matt's favorites, Basil Hayden.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, and I've just not been a big Basil Hayden fan, just because I like a higher proof bourbon. That's just, there's nothing wrong with Basil Hayden. It's just not my wheelhouse. But to me, when I drink Basil Hayden, it still drinks around that 80 proof, maybe a little bit higher, but this one actually your 80 proof drinks higher than an 80 proof bourbon, which to me, it appeals to me. Mm-hmm. It makes me, want to drink it because it does have a little bit of a spicier profile to it. And again, it's not something that's going to knock your socks off and burn you up inside and, scald your tongue or anything like that. But it's something that's enjoyable. But it does drink to me higher than 80 proof. Matt, what do you think?
I think that you're absolutely right. And I think for taking on the task and the challenge that you all had with making something approachable at a reasonably low proof, I guess you went about as low as we can go here with 80, but making something,
can't get any lower.
That's
than
right.
that.
But making something to bring in a whole new category of drinkers to bourbon, I think you did a great job and a great service, not just because you done really well with how it noses, tastes, finishes, and everything. But it's not like a one and done. It's not a quick nose, not a quick taste and a quick finish where then somebody thinks that all of a sudden they really enjoy bourbon and they go and they try something else at maybe 95 proof, and all of a sudden they get burnt up and they say, oh, well, this is nothing like what I learned how to drink. I think this does a good job of preparing bourbon drinkers, because it's got a really complex nose. It has a really, really great finish with it that's long. I'm getting a lot of cinnamon, a lot of baking spice. There's that nice note of mint on the finish as well. So, and it's long. It lingers. It's not just show up, get a little palate, and one and done. So I think you do a great service with this by really preparing drinkers that might be getting into bourbon for what they are to expect in the future. And it sounds like you're going to have products as well to release into those categories with a little bit more. But this is done really well.
Well, thank you for that. And that's exactly right. We're going to have, multiple sort of age statements and, sort of different variations. So, this is our flagship though, which we're so proud of for that reason alone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would just to add to that, Paul and I make a joke. I always make a joke, but like going back to what you were saying about Basil Hayden, Marcus, I honestly, I love stronger proof bourbons. Paul and I drink a lot of Basil, but I'll tell you, like, so imagine this, it's a little vulgar, but if Basil Hayden and Angel's Envy went to a party and they got hammered and they hooked up and they had a baby and they had a baby, it would be Brothers Bond. Lincoln Henderson is obviously a huge hero of ours. But as are the Jim Rutledges of the world, right? This intense flavor, but a true balance was something that we really sought. And Matt, to your point, that new bourbon drinker, they want to get into it. I have a saying, and Paul, we always sort of chuckle at each other, but it's true. Unless you guys have just had the easiest life in the world, but life kicks you in the teeth. Your bourbon doesn't have to. And I feel that way, with people. But, like Paul mentioned, our age statements and these line extensions, we have a cask strength that it's not just because I don't even know what else to say about it. It's this, but at 100 it varies. I think, Paul, what is it like? I think 118
or between 116 and 118, I guess.
Yeah, like 116.8 to 118. That's where it kind of volleys between the two. It's unbelievable. We have a bottled in bond, Brothers Bond, proof. Bottled in bond. Our 100 proof is, it's just the only thing I want to, this and that. Those are the only things I want to drink.
But that 100 proof is, man,
it's unbelievable. Yeah, so imagine this, but at 100 proof, and then we have an 8-year. Paul and I have been at this for a while. We started talking about this 10 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
We've been busting our asses for quite a while, but we have an 8-year that will knock your socks off, and because we blend 3 grains to get this 4 grain. Confidentially, we have a 4-year rollout.
Well, confidentially, you're on a podcast, not that confidential.
Well, no, I'm saying I'm not going to
off the record.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. I'm not going to go into what those are. But it's a 4-year rollout in this 8-year program, and it's just it's bananas, man. The flavor, like this, 4 years in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, 4 summers in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and this is what you get.
Right.
8 years in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, you get something very different, but. It's the same DNA, and man, it's just we obsess. I'd drink it with my eggs if it was socially acceptable, but I think I can bring my. I don't think my wife would go for that one.
Well, guys, let's take a quick break. Get a word from a couple of our sponsors, and we'll come back and continue the conversation. So, everybody, sit tight, and we'll be back with Ian and Paul, the co-founders of Brothers Bond Bourbon, in just a minute. And everybody, just hang on. We'll be right back.
Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by 5th-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round session period. Hey, Matt, on this one, we should say maybe act or scene 2 of the Bourbon Life podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, live from the Bourbon Life studios, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Mark, so good, man. So good.
Are you toasty out there in the front of the fireplace, man? Got y'all set up with the bourbon and the stockings and everything.
The stockings are hung by the chimney with care, as we discovered last week. Though mine's not here.
You don't have a name. Well, it says mellow moments, right? So there's 4 roses.
I don't hold that. I don't hold any clout on your mantle anyway, so I wouldn't expect to be out there.
Man.
But I'm doing great. We're having a great show, a great time already, and we are back for our second session here with Ian.
Scene 2.
Yeah, Scene 2. Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley, the co-founders of Brothers Bond Bourbon. Fellas, welcome back. Round 2. How you doing?
Doing awesome, Matt and Mark. I appreciate that. Paul, what about you, brother?
I'm great. I'm tell you this much though. I'm in this cabin, as I mentioned before, and it's a small cabin. I got my mom, I got my dad, I got my dog. I'm trying to do a podcast. I got a lot going on here, guys. Okay, at least I got my own bedroom.
You just came off the mountain. Like, things could be worse, Paul.
Well, that is true.
Well, it's the first time. This is actually the first time we've actually had. We don't have off. We're still working. He's working remote. We're just still, busting ass. But it's the first moment we've had where we're not on the road. You talked about that, Matt, about what's his name? Taking Blanton's on the road.
Elmer T. Lee.
Yeah. And, one of the things, life is about showing up, right? Business is about showing up. Passion is about showing up, and passion will drive you to show up, and that's what we want to do, is just show up. We were on the road. We've been on the road for a better part of this year. And, with the limitations of what this pandemic has sort of created, but what a rewarding time to be coming into the holidays. We're looking at a lot of numbers, and we're looking at things that haven't really been done in the super premium bourbon category period ever. We did 40,000 cases of this stuff in the first 60 days in market.
Whoa. Wow.
So you can imagine, where we are now. We're blowing past paradigms, and I say that in all humility. I'm eternally grateful and blown away, but I think what it shows is the data tells us that people are tasting this bourbon, and they're coming back for more. Because you look at your depletion rates, right? And the depletion rates are through the roof. People are ordering bourbon on a Wednesday, it's gone by a Saturday, and they're ordering bourbon again on Sunday from the distributor. So it's pretty cool. It's not even pretty cool. It's a dream come true in every way, shape, and form. And we get to tie in family, friends, agriculture, like all of it. And it even says, to be honest with you, like what we get to do in here, which we're having an experience. We wrote on the bottom of this: life is about experiences. We crafted this hand-selected bourbon in hopes that you may strengthen bonds both new and old, reminisce, share, and enjoy all it has to offer. It doesn't have to be about the bourbon. It's about this, guys, and that's what's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. And even though we're remote, it's a great opportunity. I love I was telling Paul before we started, I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for 27 years. It's a very boring job, but I show up, I do it every day. But man, doing this podcast has been such a passion project for me. And not only did I get to meet Matt and do this with him, which he's a good friend, and I enjoy the opportunity to be able to do that. But I love being able to meet guys like you, our other guests that we have on here, that we can just sit down and have a conversation all about whiskey. And it just brings us together, and we share stories, and we get to share that with thousands of people around the world, which is, it blows my mind.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
So I've got a question for you all here while we talk about sharing this whiskey, and this whiskey in particular.
Yeah, buddy.
Can you talk a little bit about your blending process and what you all set out to create when you came up with this? Because I'm thinking about it and I'm piecing together our conversation and what we've had already. And you wanted something that could bring in a whole new category of drinkers. So initially, you probably don't want something super harsh. You want nice, approachable flavors, but at the same time, you do want flavor. You don't want just watered down oak water, or you want something there. You want it to be delicious. You want it to have good nose, good palate, good taste. But then you're also kind of working within the constraints of 80 proof or a lower proof. So I imagine that at certain points during the blending process, you had to think like, oh, we're close. And then you go and check the proof on it. And you're like, oh, no, we're actually not that close. And so,
well, I mean, we made a pretty, first of all, we wanted guys like you to be able to drink it and go, oh, wow, this is pretty good. But we didn't go out and say, oh, wait, it's got to be 80 proof. I think for us, it just sort of, organically, Ian and I do like Basil Hayden, just like you, Matt. I know you're a fan. And so, Basil's an 80. We didn't go out of our way to make it 80. It's just that it just tasted perfect at 80 for us, this version of it, I suppose. And we knew that we would have line extensions and age statements that could really service more of that niche category, that sort of very specific bourbon drinker that wants the higher proof. The blending process was such a special time, frustrating time, but it was also, really fun, because Ian and I would sit there and just try, if I told you the amount of, I used to come into Ian's house and he would have these graduated measuring cylinders all over his kitchen and his living room. His wife would be like, he's been up for 3 days. He looked like a crazy person, and he'd be like, try this. No, try this. And we were just experimenting, and we live pretty close to one another. So it's just kind of that process of blending was actually like a bonding moment in itself. You want to speak to that a little, Ian? Or?
Yeah, listen, the process, and to your point, guys, about the 80 proof, so obviously we knew we wanted high rye, because you want that, rye is like the carrier pigeon, right? Rye is like the carrier that really carries over your tongue. It's prevalent, but you don't, I'll say this in all honesty, and Paul and I talk about this publicly without batting an eye. We want to be right in the middle of the damn bell curve, man. The farther out you go, the less you're going to actually be able to be impactful in the marketplace. And you get into more niche, which is fine, but that's just not where we wanted to be. And so we blended and blended. I can't even tell you the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. But for a while there, we spent 3 months or so actually at about 86, or I don't remember if it was 86 or 87 proof, Paul, but we spent a couple months hovering where this was going to be like an 86 proof bourbon. But there was one element that was missing, right? And when you talk about where you sort of come from a blending process, distilling is an art and it is a science, but the true magic of whiskey is in the blending. And I'll tell you, man, that one element we thought we had, and you're right, you don't get it all the time, or you go up to 90 proof and it doesn't work. You come down to 80 proof, it doesn't work, but there's just still one thing missing. And it's another month that goes by of blending, trying, beating your head against the wall. And it was a special time, but it was challenging. And Paul's right. There was a moment where this 80 proof started to come through in a variation of this toward the end, right? Like in like the 13th month or something. And man, it started to really seed itself. And it was the rye. We knew we had the rye where we needed it. We had the corn where we needed it. And it was those smaller grains. And it took 6 months to adjust that wheat and barley to get that equal century proportion. And man, like you mentioned, Matt, that walnut, getting that. So you got the sweetness, you got the high of the spice of the rye, but you've got that corn in there that sort of evens that out with the sweetness. But you've got that because I love wheated bourbon, right? But you've got that wheat, you've got that toasted grain, but you need that nutty quality, and that's where that barley comes in and allows you to experience a little bit of that sort of walnutty kind of nutty flavor, even like almost sometimes when you've got like during the holidays when you've cracked so many walnuts or nuts or something, you've got that like it's in your hands, it's in your skin, that's hard to put into a bottle. And we fought tooth and nail with the elements to get that quality where you're getting corn, wheat, barley, and rye together in harmony. And I mean, it was I'm so proud of what Paul and I have created, but man, I'll tell you, it was it was tough.
So were there any fist fights or any wrestling matches on the kitchen floor
No,
as
man,
you were going through?
We really have we really have had such a great experience with this together. Awesome. Man.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys have been, you've known each other now for what, 12 years maybe, or
no, 12 years.
Yeah. So a long time. And you've talked about doing this for a while, obviously. But one question I was going to ask you real quick, when you were drinking iced tea after that on the set, you'd go out and have a drink. Was there any particular bourbon? Was there anything that you guys really enjoyed? I know you mentioned Lincoln Henderson, you mentioned Angel's Envy, but was there something else? Or was there something that you guys just loved to drink together?
Well, we by default, Ian and I, we shot in Atlanta, and Atlanta is, we would have to fly constantly to LA or to, New York or to, even to Europe constantly for
60 to 90 flights a year.
Yeah. They knew us on the planes. They were like, oh, hey, Ian, hey, Paul. Anyway, so what they serve on Delta is Woodford, right? So Woodford. So by default, we were drinking Woodford. I mean, nonstop.
We drink an inordinate amount of Woodford.
Yeah, and in the AM as well, by the way. And so, and so that kind of like by default, that was our thing. And I know that, Woodford's like everyone, it's a very kind of commercial. I don't mean it, but it's still a great bourbon. And it's something that, and it's something that Ian and I would just sort of like, so when I think of Woodford, I think of Delta and I think of Ian.
Oh, that's sweet. That's nice, Paul. Yeah. But Woodford's great. We had Chris on the show. Morse, the master distiller out there with Woodford. He's a great guy, man. It just the stories he can tell. He was incredible. But for me, as a younger person, going to school here at University of Kentucky, we would buy whatever we could, Jim Beam, whatever the cheapest bourbon that we could get just to take it to the football games or tailgate or whatever. But when I got out of law school,
which by the way is a great, Jim Beam is a great,
it is. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
It's yummy.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because Woodford Reserve, the first time I bought a bottle, I felt like I was like a mature bourbon drinker, and the funny thing is it's only been around since like 96, 95 or 96, but it seems like a brand that has been around for 100 or more years.
Isn't that wild?
It is. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wonder why that is.
But I haven't. I don't know.
I've thought about that often, and I've looked at a lot of these old, a lot of these brands. When we did when we did Whiskey Pete, Christopher, who's awesome, he had sent Paul and I a gift. He sent us a bottle of their Prideful Goat, but he also sent Paul and I, it was really, really special. He sent us a bottle of bourbon from our birth year, and we were going to try it. We were going to drink it together. Mine got held up in the mail. And so he sent me a bottle of Kentucky Gentleman from 1978.
Wow.
And so that would have been put into a barrel in 1974.
Yeah.
And damn, man, if I didn't open that freaking thing and pour that out in a glass and drink it, and it was absolutely spectacular. And this was last year. It was 42 years old.
If only you aged as well as that bourbon.
I know. I know, man. If only I could age, if I can only age like a Kentucky gentleman. There you go, Mark. If I could age like a Kentucky gentleman.
Well, I hate to disappoint you guys, but we did not send you guys any 40-year-old bottles of bourbon to enjoy.
Right.
So now
no disappointment here, man. This is no, I'm really grateful. We've been listening to you guys, and it's really special what you get to do, because you bring, it's just about conversation. And in this sort of social media, short form, media world where four guys or gals or whatever can sit and just have a damn conversation, where it's not, usually now when you're sitting talking to someone, this is what you see. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Oh yeah. That's a great, that bourbon. Yeah. It's really good. Hold on 1 second. And this is the 2 hours of your conversation. It's crazy.
That I agree. And that's sad. That's usually me at dinner, but we won't go into that. But I agree, man. And that's why I love doing this. Like I said, practicing law it's pretty boring. I've been doing it for a long time, but man, there's nothing I enjoy more. And even if I've had a long day, Matt and I've talked about this before, because he works in an office, so we work full time. And at the end of the day, sometimes we're just like, oh man, it's time to do another podcast. But then we get here, we start drinking, and we start having a great conversation. And it's like a switch flips for me. And I'm just re-energized. And man, if I could do this full time, I would quit the law practice in a heartbeat, man, because I love doing this. So,
well, thank you for including us. I'm not kidding, man. You guys, what you've got going on here is really special. So, and everyone listening, by the way, we are acutely aware that we are new to this space. But because I'm a Louisiana boy, and because Paul spent the last 12 years obsessing over bourbon and bonding and creating, we've been talking about this brand for over a decade and diving into everything, man, from grain quality to, we just started buying our first stores of regenerative wheat. I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance, to see a film that we produced, that I was fortunate enough to executive produce, and Paul and I have seen this a million times together. It's called Kiss the Ground. It's on Netflix. If you get a sec,
okay, I'll check it out.
Please watch this film, and it'll shine a spotlight on what Paul and I and this company are doing. And the idea that you can bring in regenerative agriculture that can literally save our planet, into the bourbon space, because we are an agricultural company, but it's about food, family, bourbon, and regeneration. And this all ties in together. And it is so damn special to think that even the cornfields of Eastern Kentucky to the I-35 corridor ultimately will be built out as the single largest carbon capture food economy in the world, And it is such a special time right now. And this is where these grains end up. And this is what they create. So it's very special.
Yeah. So, let's talk about that, because in terms of the process, I'm kind of curious about that. When you guys decided to do this, you talked about it, you're on the show together. You knew you wanted to do this. You knew you wanted to create something. So can you kind of walk us through that process when you got to that point where you said, we're going to do this? Was it, you decided, hey, we're going to go look for barrels to buy, or we're going to go to a distillery and say, here's a mash bill, we want you guys to distill this for us and start laying it down? How the whole process, how has that worked for you guys?
That was more of a nail biter. That
Okay.
was a little more of a nail biter. Paul and I knew what we wanted. And I was in the wine business with a guy named Vincent Hanna, who sort of pioneered selling bulk wines to China and then did very well in that, ended up buying some vineyards all over the world, Mendoza, Chile, South Africa, kind of crushed it. And Paul and I decided this is what we were going to make our lives. And Vincent decided to segue out of wine and build this company for us because Paul and I did not have the tools to make our dream come true. And what you didn't realize about the bourbon business, and Paul and I learned this the hard way, Paul, step in whenever you want, because it is not easy getting, acquiring, protecting bourbon, understanding where the barrels are, what part of the rick house are they in? Are they in the top? Are they in the bottom? Are they in the middle? How much heat are they exposed to? I mean, like, there's so much to understand about the science of bourbon. And then it is, as much as it's a fun, amazing business, it is a business, and it is a cutthroat business. Money talks, bullshit walks.
Yep.
So we knew we needed a certain year's stores of bourbon to be able to forecast and create a company. And that bourbon goes very fast. And you can do new fill, but you've got to wait 4 years. You can buy 1, 2, 3, 4 year bourbon. But to make this happen and get the blends you need at the right time you need, it's very difficult. And we knew we needed money. And on a Friday, we found out that all the bourbon that we had been working toward was going to disappear by Monday if we didn't pay this amount of money. Now, it's like a Friday evening. It didn't matter it didn't matter what Paul and I wanted to do, and it was significant money. We raised 7 figures over a weekend in cash without an operating agreement. The company, it was just, here's the story, here's our passion, here's what we know the bourbon's going to taste like. Please make this happen with us. And people did it, and we did it. And come Monday morning, we were in the space we needed to be, and we secured our bourbon. And I'll tell you, man, I didn't sleep for 3 days. I chewed off all my fingernails. Paul and I were just pulling our hair out. But we did it. And Paul and Vincent and I, looked at each other and said, this is a sign. This is a sign.
Yeah.
If people are willing to give us this much capital for a story and passion, because this spirit, people love this spirit. I mean, listen, hey man, Scotch is amazing. We've all had tremendous amounts of Scotch. We all love Scotch. It's great. It's cool. Tequila can be great and yummy, and you can sip gin. You can do whatever you want, but there is nothing like American bourbon. Nothing.
Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And we are firm believers that we can do more with this company. As far as an impact company, and we are racing the clock to build the world's first truly regenerative spirits company, change the way business is done in the spirits world. And we know scientifically, once we switch to regenerative agriculture, then this little thing called climate change that this is all pounding on our door every day, will cease to exist. And from there will come healthy economies, healthy landscapes, healthy people, healthy economics, healthy social justice issues. I mean, everything. It's like, it's not a polarizing or politicizing issue. Giving more money to farmers, building healthier air, better water, better food, putting more food on tables. No one's ever going to argue with it. And that's that bonding, we can stitch this world and this country back together through agriculture and experience and food and spirits. And that's what we're doing.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm all for it. I'm always happy to sit down and share a pour with anybody, regardless of whether or not we have disagreements over certain things or whatnot, man. You can always count on the brown water to bring us all together in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's awesome.
Well, whiskey, Paul and I talk about this all the time. I sold a TV show about bourbon, actually. But whiskey, the word whiskey means water of life, which is pretty special.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, we're at the end of round 2. Let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors. We'll come back for our third and final act in just a few minutes. But everybody sit tight and we'll be back. See, Matt, I'm just so proud of myself that I came up with that. So, it's great. We'll be back with more with Ian and Paul, co-founders of Brothers Bond Bourbon, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsoffrenchlick.com to learn more information and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the final act of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and
I'm just going to do the sound effect for you here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go, man. All right. Yeah. So I'm your host, Mark, and with me as always, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, is my good friend who hates when I use sound effects on the soundboard, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Well, it's usually because I make some terrible pun and I get punished, no pun intended, for said pun. Yeah.
Oh, those are good.
There you go.
I'm doing great, Mark. Glad to be back. Glad to have you all along, our listeners, with us, whatever time of day it is for you, morning, night, evening, afternoon. So we're just appreciative of that. And we're also appreciative.
I hope it's morning and I hope you're drinking. I hope you're listening to us and it's morning and I hope you're drinking.
With eggs. Brothers Bond with eggs is freaking amazing.
There you go.
There it is. I mean, you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. So
yeah, that's right, man.
That's solid, man. That's it. You've come up with some good ones over this, but that's a solid one.
Yeah. Okay. Matt, tell everybody who we have with us. Not that they don't already know. But,
yeah, absolutely. We've got joining us back again. They stuck around. Ian Somerhalder and Pat Wesley.
Wesley? Who the hell's Pat Wesley?
Oh, my God.
Jesus, that's my alter ego. Ego.
I thought he was doing that on purpose.
You remember that? You remember that SNL character, Pat?
Yeah, that's right. It's Pat.
That's me. I'm Pat.
It's Pat.
That's maybe that's what you were psychologically thinking of when you.
Well, it's just your image on the screen is just the letter P. I don't know which bathroom you go into. I can't clue off any facial features.
I'll go by.
Well,
Pat.
look, I'll tell you. I have to pat Paul on the back a lot. So maybe that's where it's coming from.
I need it. I need a pat on the back right now.
We appreciate you guys sticking around with us for this third and final session of the Bourbon Life Podcast tonight. It's been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, hell yeah,
man. Really enjoyed this. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys. Well, first, let me just say, Ian, I know sometime earlier this year you visited Lexington and you actually came to the Liquor Barn store where Matt and I actually met for the very first time. And you were actually involved. You did a delivery. Was that right? Is that the video I saw? You did a delivery of something?
It was so fun, man. You know, being in Kentucky, I'll tell you this, being in Kentucky, and I was just talking to Matt about this. We're, not yet, obviously, some of our stuff will be, but we're not a Kentucky bourbon. And I learned this a long time ago from Jim Rutledge. He said, look, if you make bourbon and you are selling bourbon, you're not competition. You are family. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But I'll tell you, Paul and I, understanding the reception that we got in Kentucky as a Kentucky bourbon, and walking into to a liquor barn or Kroger or something, and seeing a 100-case display of bourbon in Kentucky took my breath away. And I'm not trying to sound, all dramatic about it. It damn near brought me to tears, because it was just so special to be a part of that world at that level and not be scoffed at a non-Kentucky 80 proof bourbon, to be embraced. We had a blast at Liquor Barn, and that delivery was so fun. It was so fun, man. Getting to drop that off to an unsuspecting customer, and it was just a blast. And driving through these gorgeous streets, it's like Kentucky was always our North Star, right? For my dad and I. I grew up on the horse track, and now it's kind of taboo because a lot of things have changed in the animal world and stuff, and I respect that. But I literally grew up on the racetrack. And so Kentucky, with the gorgeous green rolling hills and all those beautiful thoroughbreds and the bourbon, and was always sort of like where my old man and I wanted to end up. And so to be walking into a Liquor Barn, which I know is right down the street from your house. So next time I'm there, if you don't offer me eggs and bourbon, we might have to go to blows, Mark.
Well, man, I'll tell you,
Paul
Ian,
will be with me this time.
Yeah, everybody spoke so highly of you, man, and that's what I found impressive. Was that everybody I talked to at the store, because I told them, I was like, I'm excited because I'm going to have you guys on the show, and everybody up there that had the opportunity to meet you were just like, just such a genuine guy, just down to earth, really just so involved with this brand, and to me, I think that says a lot about you and you guys, Paul, as well. That this is not just something that you slapped a name on. You're out there. We talked about Elmer a few minutes ago. I can't remember if we were on camera or off camera, but talking about him going out and, just pounding the pavement, man, just talking in the dark ages of bourbon when people weren't drinking it. He was out there. Bill Samuels Jr. was out there. Jim Rutledge was one of the guys out there that really helped bring bourbon back from the brink. But that's really cool that you guys are approaching it with that same attitude, that it's not just something we're going to put a name on and let somebody else deal with. You guys are out there actually talking to people, meeting people, and doing things like that, man.
It's the only way to. Sorry, Ian, I didn't mean to.
No, you go ahead, buddy.
I was going to say it's the only way to, for me, and I speak for Ian as well, because we've talked about this. It's the only way to really do something and love what you're doing. I can't imagine being on a podcast or, going to, a store or talking to whomever, family or friends, and telling them about my bourbon that I don't even believe in, or I didn't have a hand in creating, or isn't something that I genuinely love. I can't for the life of me understand the notion of slapping your name on a bottle and not even understanding the product or having a hand in creating it. So to me, this is the only way to do something like this. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Well, hey, Paul, to add to that, you got to realize something, guys. Paul and I, hold on one sec. Don't move. Hold on.
No, that's all right. The noise you heard was actually Matt shaking himself off in front of the fireplace. That was not Ian's dog
jumping on my face. Paul and I, you got to remember this, man. Paul and I, and again, I say this in all humility, and Paul and I talk about this all the time. Paul and I are we are workhorses, right? We, along with the creative team, obviously, of our show and our crew, we built, I sound so stupid saying this. We built one of the single most successful television franchises in the world together. And that was built on the backs of Paul and I never stopping. So we've traveled the world together, Paul and I, pounding the pavement, building a television show over the past, decade plus. And this bourbon, because we believed in that show and that we were invested in that show, and those characters had so much of us in them, not to sound too cerebral about it, this bourbon is our baby. And we understand what it takes to get on the road and sell something to people because you believe in it. and you show up every day. And so, Paul and I've, think about that, man. We did 60 to 90 flights for a decade.
Yeah.
And we did it together. So we're doing the same thing, but with a bourbon that is, breaking sales records and paradigms and bringing in a bourbon drinker into a category where they otherwise wouldn't necessarily have come. And with that, they're going to buy other bourbons. They're going to check out other bourbons,
right.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we joke about it. We call it a gateway bourbon. So
exactly. That's true. But
it kind of is. But even for me, someone that's I don't want to say experienced drinker, but somebody who has been drinking bourbon for a while, this is something I can enjoy just as easily as someone who's never had bourbon before. So I think that's great. But
this is everyone. This is people's everyday bourbon. Like this is what people say. Right. This is what I drink. This is my everyday bourbon. It's like people have their everyday wine. It's like this is what you could drink. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
So we talked off camera a little bit, and I think you guys have really addressed that. But when you hear the word celebrity brands, celebrity bourbons, celebrity whiskey, whatever, and there are people out there that are just putting their name, doing a commercial, putting their name on a bottle, or putting their image, with the brand to be used. But it's obvious in this conversation that you guys are not in that mindset. It's something that's totally different. So can you talk about that, what it meant in terms of, confronting that, knowing that was going to be a potential issue for you guys? Can you kind of talk about that, how you dealt with that?
Paul cuts right through it. Go ahead, Paul. He cuts right through it. He's like, he's from New Jersey, man. He doesn't like
Well, no, bottom line, there's a bazillion of these celebrity brands out there. It's just it's kind of becoming sort of ridiculous. At the end of the day, these guys, for the most part, and I'm not naming names, are just slapping their names on a bottle, and that's it. And they're just, it's an endorsement. And that's just not what this is. Every single thing that you see, from the label, literally the design of the label, the name Brothers Bond, the actual bottle itself, and then certainly the mash, the juice, inside, everything was created by us. So, this is, and we built this with our team, of course, right? But this is something from the ground up. I mean, if I showed you the text threads of us trying to come up with the name Brothers Bond, you should see Ian's ideas for what the bourbon should have been named. Man, glad we went with Brothers Bond because
my God,
it was almost Brothers.
It had to be Brothers.
Brothers Supreme.
Brothers Supreme.
Brothers Supreme.
That's not going to fly, buddy.
We dance and sing and make bourbon with the Brothers.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, Paul and I too. You got to realize we've spent so much time together that there's no ego, right? So if one of us has an idea that's really just not going to work, or just really not, just kind of dumb, right? The other one can say, we cut through a lot of the sort of the BS. Obviously in a corporate setting, you have to be very respectful of people's time, energy, and thoughts. But between the two of us, we circumvent a lot of that. And so if I have an idea or Paul has an idea that's just not great, I'll literally say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And he'll go, oh, you know what? You're right. Well, actually what you said earlier was pretty stupid too. And I'll go, yeah, that was dumb. And so we have that thing where we're never vying for, it doesn't, that's where you sort of cut through it. But yeah, Brother Supreme was a mistake, Paul, for sure. I agree.
So guys, that was one of my questions I wanted to ask, and I'm sitting here looking at the bottle. Obviously our listeners can't see the bottle, but it's beautiful. I love the bottle design. I love the shape.
Thanks, man.
I love the look, the label. Can you guys just talk about that process? What went into creating this label, creating the look, creating the brand itself? Not the bourbon, but the actual, the brand, the bottling and everything.
Yeah. Paul, you want to start?
First of all, we have a fantastic CMO, chief marketing. We have a person on our team who's has a graphic design studio essentially. So a lot of
she's also launched 200 brands in her life.
Right.
she's a very sought after marketing executive.
And so when Ian and I have wild ideas, or when she actually puts them into practice. So let's get that, on the table, because we have a great team that can, sort of execute our vision in many ways. And I mean, as far as the label, if we're talking about the label first, forgive me if you said bottle or label, but the label, did you say label or bottle, Mark?
I said both. I said the bottle's beautiful. The label's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, so for the label, it's not just arbitrary. I mean, if you look at the label, you have all 4 grains of our bourbon in the design, which is the two boys, the brothers, are sitting under the tree, which is the oak tree, and the oak tree is, of course, what our bourbon is aged in, oak barrels, and then you have the mash bill, which is sort of the tree, and then you have the 2 boys sort of protected by this massive oak tree, which is sort of and they're I guess then you have the sorry, I don't have the bottle in front of me, so I'm like,
oh, you do? Oh, I got it right here.
So you have, and then you have the birds, which is sort of signifies our oath to regenerative agriculture and nature. But yeah, Freedom, Ian, you want to jump nature. In?
Yeah, I mean, so that was a thing that we always wanted, right? We want to create a sense, and Paul uses this word too. It's a level of escapism where you have this sort of aspirational vision, right? It's calming. The colors are sort of very neutral and warm. The label itself looks like a piece of wood. By the way, all this is printed on not only just recycled paper, but all these dyes are vegetable-based dyes. They're vegetable dyes. Actually, you could basically eat these things. But the boys are protected by this big, giant, organic oak tree. They have perspective. They're looking out. They're joined by this tree. And like Paul was mentioning, the birds, our commitment to nature and our agricultural commitment. And the idea was to give someone, and even in the back, it's the same sort of feels like wood almost on the label. But the idea is to give that sense of escapism, right? Meaning if you've had a long week or you're living up north and it's literally 12 degrees outside, this is something you can come and you can grab, or you're sitting on an island in the Caribbean, right? It doesn't matter, but you're looking at this and you feel a sense of inspiration and calm. And that's all you can hope to give someone, is a bit of inspiration and a bit of calm. And that's all we could have ever wanted. And I'll go back, I can say it. Her name is Tess Michelis. Her and her husband have a graphic design company that is very, well known and sought after. But this is a person who Paul and I, Vincent Hanna built a team around us of 20 plus year veterans in this business who could move the needle and who have moved the needle since the beginning of their careers. And Tess, this was a person who worked in a very high level of innovations in one of the top alcohol companies in the world. I don't have to be specific, but is a very sought after marketing executive on this business. But Paul and I have these outlandish ideas, and they just make it happen. And when you get to see that, you realize that everything is possible. And when you get back down to, again, not to sound too cerebral about it, and Paul and I talk about this all the time, when you get your feet on the ground, like this tree is rooted in the ground, and you get back with your friends or loved ones, and you pour a glass of this bourbon, you get to sit down, and you get to look at the label, but you just get to talk to each other. That's what it's about.
Yep.
It's not about having to figure out how to describe, man, this rye, this is just blowing my mind. Whoa, this is serious. Okay, let's figure out what this is. No, man, let's just roll with it. Let's just enjoy it.
Yeah, that makes it. It's funny. You talk about the calming effect, the label. When I look at the picture, it almost reminds me of an illustration, maybe from like a children's book. And I don't mean that to mean that it's childlike.
You're right on. Keep going.
Yeah. it's something that I look at, and it's comforting, to look at, which sounds weird to say that about a bourbon label, a bottle label, but you look at it and it's reminiscent to me of childhood, maybe some illustration, something from a childhood book where you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you feel welcome, and all that from a label, from a picture. I mean, that's very, very well done when you really take that in. And the funny thing was, guys, earlier today, I was just in a hurry and I cracked the bottle. I didn't drink it. I just glanced at the tree and I thought, well, those branches look kind of funny.
It's because
I didn't realize it was ears of corn.
By the way, could you imagine, you look at the size of that at scale, could you imagine an ear of corn that big? But
oh man, it's funny. But yeah, I was like, when you said that, Paul, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, those are the grains. Those are the grains. Those are grains. But I will say, and I remember, just even the conversations, writing the back copy, because again, this is a team, right? Paul and I get to work with an unbelievable team. Again, I say this in all humility, and I had this conversation actually with Jonathan Blue in Kentucky at Liquor Barn.
Yeah.
We are a new company. We are two guys not known in the bourbon world, but we are storytellers, and we hold no bar back from telling stories. I'm not worried that we're not bourbon experts, but when we tell the story in the back of this bottle, and for the listeners, if you don't mind, Mark and Matt, I'm just going to read it really quickly.
No,
I'm not trying to just sell my bourbon to you guys. I just want to.
No, man.
This meant a lot to us, and so on the back label it reads, Our brotherhood has led us right here with all of you, honoring the distilling traditions of classic American bourbon. We carefully selected a 4-grain mash bill of corn, rye, wheat, and barley. Our spirit is then skillfully cut into perfectly charred virgin white oak barrels, aged slowly and well, creating the flavors and aromas that make our bourbon a perfectly balanced expression. Life is about experiences. We crafted this hand-selected bourbon in the hopes that you may strengthen bonds both new and old, reminisce, share, and enjoy all it has to offer. That in and of itself is basically giving the consumer the right of way to just enjoy, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Just get into it.
I'll drink to that, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, cheers to that.
Thank
cheers
you,
to
guys.
that. That's great.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Yeah, it's
Ian,
very
I
much
wish your performance on the Vampire Diaries was as good as when you read the back of the bottle.
Oh, me too. It's only because it's me too. It's because I'm not standing next to you and I don't have hair and makeup and all that shit.
Maybe we would have gotten to season 9.
Thanks a lot, Ian.
Yeah, I know. Just blame it all on me, man. I'll take it. But you know what I mean? Like, come on. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, what else are we're doing here? And I guess it goes back to the celebrity, sort of spirit aspect. I will be honest, and I'll say this on camera. I mean, I'll say this on the podcast. Paul and I do everything we can not to call ourselves celebrities, but at the end of the day, we're people who are on a television show and entertainment, and we created a spirit that we believe in wholeheartedly, and we put our life and our souls into this thing. And this is what we're doing with our lives.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but at the beginning of the show, and I wanted to do that intentionally. I didn't want it to be, it's Ian and Paul from this TV show and from Vampire Diaries and from this and that, and they've done all this. Oh, and by the way, they're also the creators.
Oh, you said Brothers Bond. You first.
We didn't even say the TV. I didn't throw anything about it. I just said the introduction was co-creators of Brothers Bond Bourbon, because that's really what we're here to talk about. Yes, you guys were on a very successful television show. No question about it. A lot of people know, millions of people know who you are, but you're in the bourbon world, and that's what we were here to talk about. So that's what I wanted the introduction to be was, hey, these guys created a bourbon brand from nothing. They had an idea and they put together a team, and they've managed to do something very, very successfully that a lot of people just dream about. So that was our introduction.
Well, thank you, man. And Paul and I and our team really appreciate that.
Ian Somerhalder and Pat Wesley.
Matt, you're never going to live that down, bro.
That was a good one.
Oh, man. So, guys, I know we're kind of running out of time, and I don't want to close out because you guys had mentioned some things coming up in the future. So let's talk about what you got coming up, what's going to happen, what you're looking at in terms of releases and things that are, because this is, you've referred to this as your flagship.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone says flagship, that means this is the baseline. There's going to be other stuff. So hold on. So can you just share with us again what you're going to be doing?
And you want to jump in?
Q1. Well, actually, no. I think more. Don't hold me to it, Paul. But I think it's more February,
which is
cast
Q1.
strength.
No?
Yeah, it's Q1 for sure, but it's early Q1. So it's cast strength is coming.
Okay.
And cast strength is coming. That's going to be first, and that is, we were, listen, Paul and I and our team were overjoyed. We got a 93-point rating from Tasting Panel, which we have little sleeves that are going out soon. Man, that was a big deal. That's an 80 proof bourbon. A lot of these big scoring, let's call them institutions, if you will.
Right.
They are, they're tough on 80 proof bourbons. And I respect that. But I think that when they got a hold of this and they recognized that there was a different profile involved, they were very willing to give this the sort of rating that it deserved. That cast strength is going to come out. I think what we're hoping is that it actually gives us, legitimizes us as something that we're here to stay. This is a 50 generation legacy brand. We're not going anywhere. Cast strength is, we believe in this, and man, I'll tell you, it knocks your socks off. And then the bottled in bond, the 100 proof bottled in bond, the Brothers Bond bottled in bond.
Brothers Bond bottled in bond.
Say that. Yeah. By the way, say that 5 times. But it is so special. Paul and I sit together, and Paul and I smoke cigars together and stuff. But we sit and drink this 100 proof, and it blows our minds. And then comes the 8-year. And so we're looking at about, over this course of probably the next 18 months, cast strength, bottled in bond, 100 proof, and then 8-year. And that 8 year is going to last. That's a 4-year program. And we are with steadfast conviction, we sit here and we know that this is the right way to roll out this company. And we are so excited. We're the ultimate geeks, right? We're the ones that sit here. I wish I had my fire going, but Paul and I've sat in this room for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours concocting this company. And with Vincent Hanna, our CEO, and now our CMO and our sales team, it's a dream come true. I mean, it's literally a dream come true. I don't know anyone else who gets to do what we do. Yeah. There are very few people in the world that get to do this. You have to have,
5 or 10 years ago, you guys thought about this. Did you ever see it? Did you see it in your mind's eye that this was where you're going to be down the road?
It wasn't 5 or 10. It was 10. It was a long time ago.
All right.
Yeah, no, I think maybe in the back of our minds, Paul and I talked about this a million times. We knew we were getting off the show. Nick, Nikki Reed and I, we knew we were going to be having a baby soon. And Paul was like, maybe let's just get that out of the way for sure. Let's not try and build a company while you guys are having a kid too. So we knew we needed that right spot. And at one point, right after the Munchkin was born, we knew where we needed to be and what we needed to do. And it just never stopped. It never stopped. Yep. And by the way, I say this for Paul and I both, and we rarely, because of this celebrity brand thing, Paul and I are very, very cautious about sort of patting ourselves on the back. But I'll say to Paul how proud I am of the two of us for holding fast to saying, okay, this is our North Star. We will not compromise on quality. This brand was built on the principle of not just experiences and bonding, but on uncompromised quality. Because you can have a label and a bottle that looks like shit, right? It could be handwritten. Paul and I were talking about, you can literally handwrite it on a bottle. But if what is inside is not damn near perfect, as perfect as you can get it, then there's no point in doing this. And Paul and I stand behind that. And people who don't like the bourbon, we both respectfully say, hey, thank you for trying it. If it's a lower proof, Paul, what do you always say? You always say, it's like, Paul just says, just wait. If there's, just wait. There's stuff coming down the pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because we had Fred and Freddie Noe on the show, and we talked a little bit about Basil Hayden, and Matt. That was one of his favorites. It still is one of his favorites. Mm-hmm. But we talked with them and joked that, man, we would love to get a barrel strength Basil Hayden's out there. So
I'm surprised they haven't
you guys
done
talking
it.
about. I am too, and actually, Matt, didn't Freddie say he had a bottle in his office, like straight from the barrel that he keeps around? But yeah, so they don't release a barrel strength Basil Hayden's, but you guys coming out with a cask strength Brothers Bond, that kind of triggered that whole conversation. So you've got this 80 proof bourbon that drinks higher than that, but now you're going to come out with this whole cask strength. So it's going to be a really cool. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have to do another show now, guys. I'm just going to tell you,
No, by the way, I say this and all, like, joking aside, we have to, because Paul and I are so excited about this. I mean, yeah, look, it's cask strength. I mean, it knocks your socks off, but it is so damn new. Imagine this, but it cask strength, Oh, yeah. And we have here's the thing. Oh, Paul, thanks for reminding me. Barrel proof. Right. I mean, barrel programs, every retailer, and I say this in all humility, and I'm knocking on wood, there's not one company that we have pitched this to that has not, come together and formed a contract with our company. Barrel programs are a big deal. And we are building out a barrel program right now that we are so damn proud of. The innovation and the R&D that we are doing. We never stop, this guy and I and our team. And it's exciting, man. This barrel proof program is really exciting because we've got the juice. We were smart enough and fortunate enough to really lay down some serious capital and some serious, at great risk to ourselves. And Paul, I think we can talk about this now publicly, but it's just about done. We wanted to have a tremendous amount of, let's say, product, and we wanted to have a tremendous amount of leeway and innovation. And so we built a bond structure. You think about this. We're not on the open market yet, but we're about to be, so I can say this publicly. Think about this. Brothers Bond bonds. We're literally selling, SEC backed bonds backed by bourbon.
Gotcha. By bourbon.
Mm-hmm. And because it's a hot commodity, but it gives us the leeway to build out a very substantial company. Like, this isn't some one and done thing. I mean, this is, like I mentioned, Paul and I talk about this when we talk about what we want to leave. This is a 50 generation legacy brand. This isn't going anywhere. We're here to stay. Awesome, man. We're here to stay, man. We're here to stay. And, but if you get a chance, please, Paul and I beg you, watch Kiss the Ground. Yeah. Watch the film. Yeah. It's on Netflix. You can watch it tonight.
I'm going to do it tonight. When we're done, I'm going to go upstairs and watch it.
Please, man, please just watch this film, and it'll show you what we mean by what we're doing.
Don't drink that 120 something proof and drink it and watch it.
It is the worst movie I've ever seen. Yeah.
I'm gonna get on Instagram and be like, "This is the worst movie by Ian."
Yeah, right.
Yeah. By Pat. I don't know who this Pat.
By Pat Wesley. I've never seen this.
I really butchered this one.
Yeah.
We really.
That was a horrible movie, man.
We really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, we're at the end of round 3 here, so we'll wrap it up. I don't want to keep you guys on because we could talk for all night, and that would be fun. That's what this is about: conversations, hanging out, and getting to meet new friends, and sharing some great bourbon. So, Matt, before we wrapped it up, though, I wanted to get your final thoughts, though, on what we've been drinking tonight, man.
I'm really impressed.
Thank you, man.
The easiest way to say it is I'm really impressed. Now let's go a little bit further. This has been a great 80 proof bourbon that noses, drinks, and finishes a lot more complex, a lot stronger. This will definitely be a go-to on my bar. This will be a highly recommended bourbon to friends. I think that you hit everything you wanted to for this. You got a bourbon that's going to be great to people that are new to the category, a bourbon that's great to sit around if you know what you're doing and you know what you're drinking, and you can sit around and talk about it. But most importantly, I think what you brought tonight to us was the fact that it's not so much what's in the glass, it's who's around it. That's really important. And hearing your brand and your philosophy and what you all have done and how you've created such a great bourbon, but also your responsibility to what's around it, your environment, our environment, the future, and just the friendships and rekindling around the spirits and around the bottle. I think that's really important. You all did a really great job. And I feel the hospitality of it.
Thank you, brother. That's
Thank
super
you so
kind
much.
of you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I can't top. See, I can never top Matt. I just, I can't I can't say anything more than what he just.
Well, after butchering
said,
one of our guest names, I got to try to climb myself out of this
going
hole
Paul
here.
By the way, he had to be extra nice.
No,
kind of glad he butchered my
I
name
mean,
because now he's got to be super nice about the
No, I
whiskey
appreciate
review.
that, Matt. No, thanks for that, Matt. I mean, that means the world to us, man, because you guys know, anyone starting anything, this is a highly competitive world in business, and you're dealing with the big dogs. You are looking to, I'm not talking about taking market share. I'm talking about dialing into a community of bourbon drinkers, right? And you're dealing with the people who are, obviously guys like Lincoln Henderson aren't around anymore, but the Fred Knows are still around, and the Wes Hendersons are still around, and the Jim Rutledges are still around, and these people, they take no prisoners. They're amazing men. They have built this, and so when you're swimming in these waters, you're swimming in deep waters. You better have your shit together, and so the only thing we can hope to have is a story and a juice that inspires bonding and experience. And I think that we could all argue, or not argue, that right now in history, we need bonding and togetherness more than ever. So we feel this is the company to do it on all levels, and you want to talk about ticking boxes off. So check out that film. It's going to really sort of shine a light on what we're doing and what we're going to build this company to be. And just know that there's another movie coming down. We have the second movie is in the can. We have about 7 more interviews to do. But the film Kiss the Ground took us 7 years to make. 7 years. And I shot the first footage of this in Africa. What, Paul? We were in season 2. So 10 years ago. I shot the first footage of this 10 years ago. So it's no joke, man. And so thank you for that, Matt. Thank you, Mark. And Paul, miss you, buddy. Haven't seen you in 5 days, Paul. I don't even know what to do with myself.
Hey, by the way, happy early birthday to Ian. Tomorrow's his birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, happy birthday, man.
I appreciate that,
Bourbon Life shout out for that. Matt, I have to tell you, man, that I actually bought this bottle at Liquor Barn, and it was on their allocated shelving. So I don't know if there's any bottles left up there now. So you may be on your own to find your own bottle, because I bought this one and it's staying, with me. So
hey, that's not a problem.
You know what, Mark? I actually just sent Matt a case, so don't worry.
Oh, damn it! All right, guys, where can people find your product? Where can they find information about Brothers Bond Bourbon?
So brothersbondbourbon.com. Obviously on Instagram at Brothers Bond Bourbon. You can,
like the biggest.
The most followed
spirits
brand in the world on Instagram. And we are so damn proud of that, man. I mean, listen, that spirits business article that came out, it was the earliest Christmas present I've ever gotten. And we worked hard for that. We have a team that positions us in that way. And Paul and I never stop. Paul, Wesley, and I built a vampire franchise together that has exceeded everyone's expectations 10x or 100x, whatever that may be. It's one of the biggest shows in the world. I say that in all humility. If you just put this in perspective, guys, I know we got to go, but in 2020, Vampire Diaries I forgot if it was Variety or Hollywood Reporter, it was the 15th most streamed show in the world. in 2020 at 14.1 billion minutes. Just think about that number. And I think overall, in the grand scope of viewership, don't quote me on it, but I think it is the top 10th most watched show in ever.
Wow.
It's a big, substantial piece that came from passion, hard work, dedication. And this guy and I just never stopped pounding the pavement, country after country, convention after convention, interview after interview, set day after set day. We just never stopped, and we did it together. We didn't do it alone. And Brothers Bond is not just a nod to those characters and a nod to our, brotherhood, but a nod to our commitment to quality and experience. While our performances may not have been quality, God damn it, our bourbon is.
Oh man, that's awesome, man. We appreciate that, guys.
Thank you.
We've had a great time. I'm sorry we kept you guys so long.
I appreciate
but man, this has just been a great conversation. Looking forward, hopefully, maybe to getting to meet you guys sometime in person.
No, we'll see you. Listen, guys, when we come down to Kentucky, which is going to be soon, please let's go do something together. Let's go and sit. Let's have a meal. Let's toast some bourbon. Paul, we're going to be, we're actively looking at property down there. Where are we going to be? What are we going? Where is our home base going to be?
I was going to ask you that because you said as a kid, you and your dad, I mean, this was kind of the place. This was it, Kentucky. So I was going to ask, when's that going to happen? When you coming home, Ian? When are you going to come home to us?
Exactly, man? Right. No, we're figuring all that out right now, man. I mean, it's a big part of who we want to be. And we want to be a part of that place. We want to be a part of that world, and we're gonna work our asses off to do it. We've come this far. We're not going to stop.
Well, great. Well, guys, we really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Anything you want to add before we close it out tonight?
Just gratitude, Paul. Right? That's what Paul and I were just talking. Gratitude.
Yeah. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for the hospitality, and we'll hope to do it again.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening, and thank you guys for talking about this in such a way in which, doesn't leave us in the dust. It actually gives us a platform to build this company, which, we aim to be the most impactful one out there.
That's awesome. We appreciate that. Matt, anything you want to add before we close it out?
I'm just really appreciative of everything and all the effort you all have put in. It definitely shows and shines through, not in the product itself, but also in the story around it, and just hearing you two talk about it, your passion and how you want this to go bigger and beyond the bourbon. It's much appreciated. It's certainly not lost on me.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mark. And thank you everyone for listening to Paul and I, sound like idiots,
Hey, if they can put up with Mark and I think you two are like a breath of fresh air.
We're a close second.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate all of our listeners. Thank you guys whenever you're listening to us, whatever time of day it may be. We do this because we just love the spirit. We love the camaraderie. We love the stories that are told, like this story tonight. And we just appreciate you guys listening to us. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Again, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Bespoken Spirits, and we appreciate them. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Very thankful for them, and that they help us to continue to get to do this on a weekly basis, man. So we're just thrilled about that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us, thebourbonlife@gmail.com. Obviously, we're on Instagram, Facebook. Check us out there. Check out thebourbonlife.net. Yes, I know it's not .com. It sucks, but it is .net. So check that out. With that said, man, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.